Now, before we finish up text, we want to look at one more really important feature, and that is the use of web fonts. In previous versions of HTML, we had to rely on the user having the fonts, and that meant sticking to some very basic fonts that we were pretty sure the users have. In HTML5, I can actually package up the fonts that I want to use and send them along with the rest of the elements of my web page. And that way we can pretty much use any kind of font we want. I'm going to go back out to my working files folder, and you'll notice that I have a font folder here that includes 2 files. Now, this is a font that I downloaded earlier from the internet, and it's not included in your working files simply because I don't have the license to be able to give you these fonts. But you can do a search on the web yourself, and you can download some files that you can use for whatever font you want. Make sure you pay attention to the license restrictions so you know what you're allowed to do with that font. Now, this particular font I've chosen is free to use, but not free to distribute. So let me go up to the browser, and first I'll just show you where I got it. I've got a bookmark up here, and it was for a site called fontsforweb.com. I did a little searching around to find a font I liked, and I also checked the license to see if there were any restrictions on my using it. You can see it has a big handwritten style. So all I've already done for my example is I've downloaded the full zip package, and I've unzipped it and placed it inside my folder so that I could use it with the rest of my files. There are lots of font places like this, and you may also have some of your own fonts. But in this case, what we want to do is make sure that we have the EOT and the TTF file extensions. Those two will make sure that your font works on almost all the browsers that we work with. Now we can go back over to our document, and we can make a few changes. We'll start by defining the font right up here at the top of my style section. Now, in setting up a font like this, we use a special tag or a special declarator for defining the font face itself. And it starts by using the @ sign, and then we use a declarator for font-face. Now, we'll set up a normal style around this, which means I set up braces. We'll do the beginning and ending braces there. And then inside here, what we want to do is define the font-family property. And here, you can give your font a name. You can actually choose whatever name you want. I generally try to make it match the font I'm using itself so I can find it pretty easily. So I'll call this one Johnny Mac. Now we need to set up one very specific property in here, and that is the source. We want to tell it to use the files that we have loaded into our directory. So let me go down here, and I'm going to add a source property, src. And for that, we're going to specify a URL path name to our font files. So I'll start that off with our URL declarator, again, new for CSS3, and then we can just put the path name in parentheses here. Now, my files I have put into a folder called fonts, and if you've downloaded your font files as well, you only need the EOT and the TTF files. Just make sure you put them someplace where you can drop them in. I'm going to select the name of this file here so I can copy it. And I'm going to go up in here to my URL declaration, and first I'll say it's in the fonts folder. Then we'll put a slash, and then I'll put in the name of the file. Now again, since I'm using the URL property here, I don't have to put this in quotes like we did earlier. Now I want to specify both file names because some of our browsers need one set of fonts and some need the other. So I'm going to put a comma here at the end of my source declaration, and I'll simply add a second URL. This one, the file is actually the same name, so it's in the fonts directory, slash. I'll go ahead and paste in the old file name, but instead of being an EOT file, this is a TTF file. I'll close off that second URL statement. Of course, I need a semicolon for the end of my source line, and let's save our changes so far. Now, that's the first part. We've defined the font face, and what we've actually also done is we've given our font face a name that we can use to refer to it by. So now, in order to see our font show up, let's go down and pop it into one of our other styles. I'll go ahead and add it to the content style that we created earlier. I'll just put a line down here at the bottom for the next property, and we'll do a normal font family property for this div. Now, in specifying the font, I simply use the font name that we created and referenced earlier. So this would be Johnny Mac. Let me end that style line, save our changes, and let's go back out to our browser. I'll back up to the page that we were looking at before, And I'll just refresh. And now you can see that that content section is using our custom font file.